For the Guinness and Hardin reading, I hope that you didn't allow the mathematical formulas to kind of distract you from the primary overall big picture. And so that's what I want to convey to you now, is just what are the primary takeaways of that piece. And so the next couple slides, I'll let you know the highlights. So in this slide, the whole point is just to let you know that a small effect size can be a valuable finding, but there's a cost to finding it, in the sense that, remember, we have to have a very sensitive study in order to pick up tiny effect sizes. So small effect sizes, again, are sometimes important to find. And here are some of the reasons why. So first, a small finding may be important when it flies in the face of conventional wisdom. So the Milgram study had actually a large effect size, but even if it had a tiny one, the Milgram obedience study would have been important, because it shows that some people, even if it was a small propensity, that some people would be willing to hurt others if told to do so. So any study that overturns previous understandings of different phenomena are, even if you get a small effect with those studies, only a small number of people show this or demonstrate this phenomenon, that still may be important depending on your research question and the implications for practice. So that's one case. And then a small but pervasive effect may be very important. If you have some kind of treatment, just as one example, hormonal treatment for menopausal women, or some kind of other, maybe a drug that has a small but long-lasting and consistent effect, may be important for us to find, because it may have very big benefits for people's health over a period of time. And then finally, similar to that actually, when there's a cumulative effect, so you have a small difference, a small effect size that you find in your study, but it may have large implications for a group of people. For example, here, the 1% pay difference between men and women, so I think that it is actually much higher than that in reality, but let's say it was very small. So it's a small percentage difference. Over a long period of time, that would have a disproportionate effect on women. So over time, we would want to know that this little difference existed, because it might have a compounding effect over time. So those are some of the times where we would really care about finding a small effect. So if you find a small effect in your study, and there may be some critics who would say, well, what difference does this really make? I had this happen recently, actually, with a reviewer, and it was about prejudice experienced by Asian Americans. I was doing a paper with a colleague on this, and the reviewer criticized the study because it didn't find a large effect. In other words, Asian Americans weren't reporting, in our sample at least, weren't reporting huge amounts of prejudice. And so we found this tiny effect, but it was there. It was still there. They were still reporting some prejudice. And so the reviewer said, well, what does this matter in the end? And so you, as the researcher, kind of have to make the case sometimes that my finding does matter. So, for example, we argued that even a small amount of prejudice may have long-term effects, and I think we had to come up with some evidence for that, but it wasn't difficult to find. The study was reducing prejudice, stress, that is caused by prejudice, by certain religious coping behaviors. And so the reviewer said, well, what does it matter if it's reduced by just a couple percentage points? And we argued back that it could be extremely important that any kind of stress that results from experiencing prejudice and discrimination in your life could be significant and could be really, really important. And so we built a case for that. So just FYI, when you're doing your studies, you may come across that critique as well. Someone will say, well, what is the practical or clinical significance of this small effect? And you, as the researcher, would say, well, here's why it matters. And so hopefully that's the point of this slide. Hopefully it gives you some ideas for making that case.